Good evening, everyone, and thank you all so much for joining me. I'm really excited, and I hope you are too. Tonight, I've got Ben Oliver, who's going to be in conversation with Kass Morgan. So you don't actually even have to listen to me try and ask questions. You get to listen to two amazing authors. So, Benjamin Oliver grew up in Scotland and began writing long before he could spell. He attended the University of Stirling, where he studied English, but spent most of his time trying to write a novel. Benjamin's first short story was published when he was 18, and since then he's been published in over a dozen literary magazines and anthologies. Fueled by astounding amounts of coffee, Benjamin completed The Loop, his first full-length young adult manuscript, in Edinburgh, where he currently lives and teaches English at secondary school. The Block is the second book of the Loop trilogy. Kass Morgan is the New York Times bestselling author of The 100, the inspiration for the hit CW show of the same name, Light Years, and The Ravens, which she co-wrote with Danielle Page. She lives in New York, where she works as a children's book editor. And with that, I'm just going to turn it over to them. So thanks again, guys.
Thanks so much, Drew, and thank you everyone for joining us. Ben, I'm just going to start off by saying congratulations. Publishing a book is always an enormous accomplishment. Publishing a sequel is an even bigger one. And then when you add on pandemic publishing to that, it's just quite an achievement. So I hope you've been giving yourself lots of pats on the back.
Thank you. Yes, I have, I think.
It's probably surreal in many ways. So had you finished The Block before we all went into lockdown, or were you still finishing it up?
No, I was still, I think I was on the final draft of The Block when we went into lockdown. In fact, in Scotland anyway, The Loop came out the day that bookshops shut down and Amazon stopped shipping books for a few days. So it was possibly the worst possible day for my book to come out, but it was okay in the end. Everything's been fine. I'm not going to complain because I know how lucky I am to have books out there in the world. So,
and weirdly appropriate to have a book set in a super high-tech prison come out during lockdown. I'm sure you've talked about this at your other events, but sort of like, I don't know, like creepy guerrilla marketing. Were you responsible for all this?
I wasn't, no, but no, I have. Yeah, that's been pointed out to me quite a few times that, everyone's in isolation and lockdown. And then I release a book about people very much locked down and in isolation. So, yeah, I suppose it could be considered a little bit of guerrilla marketing. But
yes. And, an escapist read in many ways. You pick it up and you think, you know what? It could always get worse. I'm out of toilet paper. I'm out of milk, but I don't have to make these life or death decisions. So
yes,
very comforting.
Hopefully, it's a good bit of escapism. Yeah, a little bit of comparison.
So writing a sequel under contract is always a very different experience than writing a first book on spec, and then that's compounded by the fact that the world seemed to be shutting down. So what was the experience like writing a book under deadline and suddenly knowing that it's going to be published versus just writing something that was, I imagine, initially just a project for you?
Yeah, you're right. It's so different, and something that I hadn't obviously experienced. What with The Loop being my debut and The Block being my second book, yeah, it's the first time I'd had to write with a deadline and the knowledge that this book would be coming out. And yeah, it really did change the writing process a lot. I felt a lot more pressure. It was still fun. I still enjoyed it. I still enjoyed the process, but yeah, I could definitely feel that deadline ticking ever closer every single day.
Yes. A death sentence, if you will.
Yes, very similar to that. Yeah. Writing The Loop was like you said, it was just me writing for myself. I was writing something that I really wanted to, a book that I would want to read. This was my goal. I would just, every day write a little bit of it, and I thought it was quite good. And then I got an agent, and then I got the publishing deal, and it was all really exciting. And then all of a sudden, it was okay. We need another one of these, in about 6 months, and that was And during a pandemic as well, made it a little bit more difficult because I never really felt in the right kind of headspace to write. Initially I thought, okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Initially I thought, with all this, suddenly, there's no excuses. There's nowhere to go. You're going to be at home. You've got all this time to write. But yeah, it didn't really work out like that. So,
would you have accepted any delays? And we'll get into that for people who haven't. Actually, let's use this as an opportunity. I assume everyone here has read and loved The Loop. But for those who haven't, can you give a quick overview of book 1 and then a little bit of a setup for book 2?
Yeah, The Loop we follow the main character, Luca Kane, who is in a futuristic death row prison for teens, for young adults. And it's all about his daily life inside this prison that is run by an artificial intelligence. And one day, a major event happens in the outside world, and he has to start thinking about how he's going to get out of here because the AI seems to have failed or is perhaps turning against humanity. And suddenly the prison's not working. Nobody's bringing them food. Nobody's doing anything. So they have to think about how they escape. And once they do, the outside world has gone a little bit crazy. So that's book 1. Sort of follows Luca Kane on his journey out of the prison and into the real world, where things have there are many dangers and things have gone very wrong. Book 2 picks up where book 1 left off, but Luca's in a new prison that's a lot more much more extreme. It's a much more extreme situation for him, and it's all about him once again trying to escape a prison and learn exactly what has gone wrong with the artificial intelligence that was running the world. So that's where we are at with book 2.
Fabulous. I am so sick of pandemic questions. I'm sorry I'm peppering you with them, but just it blends itself so well. So I'm curious, I imagine you had a lot of the trilogy planned out ahead of time, but did any of your 2020 experiences change the way you imagined the second prison? Were there any details that you took from life that you didn't expect to be able to use?
Well, actually, first of all, I didn't really have much of the trilogy planned. I knew that the story. I know that's the reaction I get from especially writers when I tell them I didn't really plan it that much in advance. I kind of was with The Loop. I sat down and just started writing with no idea of where it was going to go. And I sort of did the same with the blog. My publishers asked me for an outline of books 2 and 3, and I didn't have one, so I just wrote down some random ideas and thoughts and sent it off to them. And books 2 and 3 have turned out nothing like my original ideas. So, but in terms of has 2020/2021 changed the direction? There's definitely, in fact, really with book 3, because that's when it was really kind of deep into the pandemic. But there's a certain scene in book 3 where, because of these drones that sense like heat and movement, they all have to stand 2 meters apart, and so they don't create a big heat signature. And that's definitely something that was obviously ingrained in my mind. Social distancing to the extreme. The pandemic gets mentioned in book 3 as well. I tried not to let it affect my writing at all, because I didn't, the pandemic didn't exist before I started writing. So, but because it's set in the real world and it's set in the future, I guess there would be some sort of impact from the pandemic. So I guess at some point I had to address it. And,
It kind of blows my mind that you didn't have this all planned out, because, the block just feels so intentional and the pacing's perfect and the twists blowing my mind. So the ending of book 2 is just astounding, and that's all I'm going to say, because I don't want people to read anything into my face, any spoilers in my eyes. But when did you realize how you were going to end book 2? At what part in the writing process?
Very late on, actually. It was probably about 10 pages from the end when I was writing, when I thought, okay, I know what's going to happen here, I think. And then, even to me, it seemed quite shocking and quite unexpected. So I thought, if I'm surprising myself, surely it's going to surprise the readers and they won't see it coming. So, I'm really trying not to say what happens here. I'm trying to edit myself as I speak so I don't accidentally blurt out what actually happens at the end of the book.
They'll mute us if we get too close to that. So trilogies are a special challenge as a writer, and we always tell debut authors, don't read reviews, don't read Goodreads, just don't let feedback from readers influence your storytelling. But you teach secondary school. You're surrounded by teenagers all the time who must have read your book and given you feedback whether you liked it or not, right?
Yes, yeah. Luckily, most of it's been really good. most of it has been really good. No, my classes are fantastic for that. They've always been really. So, well, first of all, I don't know how they found out because I tried not to, tell them. And I write under a different name from what I teach. So I just thought they'd never find out, and I could go ahead and go.
You can't hide anything.
No, especially not these days. Yeah, but they found out, and it was a good thing. Like they bought copies in to get signed, and it's in the library, and yeah, it was really exciting, and their feedback's been really good because I think when your first book comes out, you're just a bag of nerves, and you're terrified that no one's going to like it or it's going to crash and burn. But I was lucky just to hear that almost straight away. That feedback was really nice, so I really appreciated them seeing that. So that was
glad
nice.
You had that experience, but I can't believe you thought it would stay a secret. I went to my 15-year high school reunion, and I said something to my biology teacher. You're like, "Oh, are you still dating so and so?" It's like a teacher she was secretly dating in high school, and she goes, How did you know that? I'm like, everyone knew. You can't keep secrets from students.
You just can't. It's true. It's like they're little psychics or something. They know everything. They can see inside your brain.
Know everything. So I am just blown away by the world building in this series. It's what I admire most as a reader, because I think it's what I struggle with most as a writer. I love happy. I mean, that's weird to say love, but it's just fascinating. And then I really loved getting to know Applemoth, the drone in book 2. And it was just sort of an interesting sort of pivot with the technology to show sort of Luca having a very different relationship with a sort of different type of AI. So is that something you did on purpose to show the different sides of technology? So it's showing that it's not always sort of sinister and manipulative, that it sort of can run the gamut of emotion and sort of human interaction?
Yeah, I think that was intentional, definitely, to sort of show. I didn't want to be anti-technology from page 1 to page, from book 1 to book 3, from start to finish, because there are obviously very positive sides to technology. It's just, I think my fear of technology obviously comes through in the books quite strongly, but I wanted to show the other side as well, because things like, medical advancements through technology are amazing. I just think the insidious side of technology needs to be examined a bit closer, and that's kind of why Happy is the way it is in the books. But speaking of like planning and whether I plan things like showing the different sides of technology, that's when I tell people that I don't really plan my books that much, I just sit down and write. I quite often from writers get, well, that must save you so much time, if you don't have to do the planning phase. But it doesn't really, because, it just means more drafts. It just means like I write a pretty bad draft first, and I see, okay, well, I'm obviously trying to show the other side of technology through this character, and I'll have to bring that out more in a second draft, and then it doesn't speed up the process. My lack of planning, it just means I have to write 100 drafts before I'm happy with it. So,
so you're definitely a pantser instead of a plotter.
100%, yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think it comes down to impatience, really. Like, I think I probably would write drafts quicker if I sat down and planned it out beat for beat, chapter for chapter, but I'm just impatient and I want to get into the story, which is actually, I always had a problem with pacing, because I wanted to get straight into the action immediately with every book. So like the several books I wrote before, The Loop, the ones that didn't get published or didn't get me an agent, pacing was always where I really struggled, because I didn't plan. I wanted to jump straight into the action, and yeah, that's something I had to learn to slow the pace down quite a lot. So yeah, so that's something I really.
Yes. So speaking of that, do you have any sort of hard-won tips for aspiring writers, something you've learned about the process that you really, really couldn't have figured out before writing multiple drafts of 2 books?
I think my advice is really for the very early stage of a writer's like career, I suppose, and that's to finish something, like whether it's good or not. The first, like for me, that was a real kind of dam bursting moment where I realized, oh my God, I can actually write something substantial, something that is novel length, because I wanted to write a novel for years before I actually did. And I'd always sit down and write 10 pages or something over the span of however many days, and just think, this is so slow, it's impossible to actually write a substantial amount and pace it and make it good. And I think I probably started 100 projects and never really finished one. And then one day I just was, no matter what, whether you hate this halfway through or not, just finish it, just to prove to yourself you can actually, write a novel-length piece of work. And I did. And it's terrible. I still have it in my emails, and sometimes I find it and I read a few pages and I can't even look at it because it's really bad. But it was kind of the moment that it made it possible. I was like, it's not impossible for me to write a book. I can sit down day after day, write a few hundred or a few thousand words, and it will turn into a novel length thing eventually. And yeah, for me, that was like the moment that I thought, okay, I kind of broke the spell of, like I can do this. And yeah, everything I wrote from then was a little bit better than the last thing until I got to, and obviously there's so much luck involved as well in every kind of getting an agent and then getting a publishing deal. The right person has to read your work at the right time. So never be disheartened by the fact that your writing, didn't get you to where you wanted to. The next thing might, and you just have to sort of stay in the game as long as you can and keep trying. So yeah, I think
Absolutely.
That's my advice.
And luck and talent and timing and all that doesn't come into play until you finish. And I think it's really important for people to realize that the people who get published aren't necessarily the most talented people on earth, though I think you are one of them. It's a small pool of people who manage to finish that draft and then have the talent and the grit and the luck to turn it into a book. So I think that's a really important point. I try to remind myself, but God, do I have trouble finishing? I would just, if I weren't under deadline, I would give up. I would abandon every single project. So I need a lot of accountability.
The one upside to deadlines is it just kind of force you to finish something. So yeah.
Yeah, and because of how well your books have been received, like people would come and hunt you down if you don't finish this third book. Like the readers will be pissed. You can't finish the block and not be dying for the next book.
Yeah, well, I'm working on book 3. In fact, I think my deadline's quite soon, and I'm a little bit behind on it, so I'm going to have to work on that tomorrow, I think.
All right, so I have a dark question. Can you talk about the concept of the delays in the first book, and then tell us what sort of delay you would be willing to agree to have extra time for your deadline?
Oh, that's a good question. So the delays, just to explain them, like I said, the characters are in a death row prison, so each of them have a death sentence, and in 6 months from when you're imprisoned, you will be executed unless you agree to take part in what are called delays, which are medical and scientific experiments for the betterment of the rich in society, essentially. So you become a guinea pig, and if you agree, you sign a contract, you get another 6 months of life. 6 months later, you sign another contract, you'll have an experiment done on you, which may kill you, or it may mutilate you, something horrible might happen to you, but you get 6 months more of life. And all the inmates sign up to this because they don't want to die, essentially. So that is the very dark concept of the delays in the loop. And the other part of your question, what delay would I be willing to agree to push back a deadline?
It's a pressure. That's too weird.
No, I mean, in the loop, they're usually very gruesome things. I think Luca talks about having some of his bones removed and a synthetic bone put in, and it hurt. And one of them has their eyeballs removed and replaced with robotic eyes. So I definitely wouldn't agree to anything like that. Maybe if it was part of like a drug trial and there was a 50% chance I'd get a placebo, maybe I'd agree to that. Just to get another 6 months to write the last book, I might agree to that one.
What about just like a little sliver of pinky? Just like a cooking accident.
Okay, yeah, I'd agree to that, I think. Just to give me as much time as possible.
So one of the things I find so impressive about this series is that it feels in many ways like an homage to so many sci-fi classics in so many wonderful ways, while still feeling incredibly fresh and original. So it sort of plays into the tropes that people want while still turning them all on their head. So I'm curious, what were some of the touchstones for you? What did you, purposely want to gesture towards? And what tropes were you like, that's actually a pet peeve of mine and I don't want to go anywhere near that?
It certainly is influenced by, the obvious things like 1984 and Brave New World, and a few like Arthur C. Clarke and Philip K. Dick things, definitely. But also more modern things like Hunger Games and things like that definitely have had a big influence on it, because these are the books that I loved when I was growing up. And I was saying to you earlier that when I was writing The Loop, I was trying to write the book, like my perfect book, when I was 13 or 14 years old. That was sort of the age when books really meant the most to me. And I think, I was trying to write that book for myself when I was a kid. So, those books really had a big influence on the writing process. Tropes that I really try to avoid, things like, I don't know, characters falling in love too easily. Is something that I find like I try to avoid. But I don't know. I'm not sure how well I write romance, because I mean, Luca does have a romantic sort of connection with Kina, but so far it's not really gone it's not gone much further than that early stage. So I don't know if I've slowed it down too much, or I don't know. But so I think the romance side of things, I'm a little bit scared of writing it, and I'm scared of falling into the trap of having them fall in love too easily and for almost no reason. So that's something I'm trying to avoid.
I love a slow burn, and I totally approve of how you've been setting this up. And the readers are in. Yes, take your time. I got it. I'm getting like editorial feedback. I'm loving every minute of it. So we have gotten some very smart questions in from some audience members. Let's see. I'm not going to say people's users' names because I'm going to get them wrong. But I'll try. GetX, like X me, 123, in case any of this is meaningful to you. You're like, oh yeah, that's my neighbor. GetX. The loop felt so cinematic in scale. I'm so excited to read the block. Are there any plans to continue with the story or any of these characters after the trilogy, perhaps in another format? Ooh, big question.
Good question. Mm-hmm. In terms of books, I have no plans to go beyond the trilogy. Just now, I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't do it. I just don't have an idea for a prequel or a sequel that I'm really excited about right now. But quite often ideas just come out of the ether, out of nowhere, and I might in the future write something just to continue the story, because I do love that world and I love the characters. So, I mean, like I said, I'm almost finished writing book 3 just now, and I'm already getting sad that I'm saying goodbye to these characters and this world. So I definitely wouldn't say never to that. In terms of another format, the option has been sold to a production company to potentially make a TV show, which I think would be, I haven't got my head around that fact yet, even though it was sold about 2 years ago. I just can't, it would be, I think the ultimate dream come true to see it turned into a TV show. I think that would be amazing. And I'm quite happy just to, almost like hand it over and see what they do with it, because I have my books, I've written those, and I'm happy with, and I love them. So it'd be really interesting to see someone else's take on it. And yeah, that would be probably one of my ultimate dreams, would be to see it on TV. That'd be amazing.
Well, you might be happy to pass it over and take a step back and let the experts do their thing, but your readers will not be, and they're going to email you every time that there's a change, and they're going to ask you why you approved of it. But it's a wonderful problem to have.
Yes.
I hope you experience that problem.
Yes, me too.
All right. Oh, David Levithan. I don't know who that is. Never heard of the guy. These books are so masterful in their world building. Who are some authors who you used as models for world building? Oh, that's a great question.
A very good question. In fact, when I had the idea for the loop and I sat down to write it, I had just finished reading Red Rising by Pierce Brown, which is a fairly new, maybe 2013 or 14 it came out. But I just think the world building in that almost put me off writing the loop, because it was so good. It was like, I can't match that. It's just unbelievable. So, and I've read the entire series so far that he's written, and it's just, that blows my mind how well he writes. He creates worlds and characters, and they're all so vivid and it's different planets, and he still manages to make them so vivid and lifelike and real. So that really blew me away. Pierce, and I think part of me was trying to, match that and not quite getting there, but he's a phenomenal writer. So yeah, just as I started writing The Loop, I had read Red Rising, and I would advise young aspiring writers to read that book when it comes to world building and character building, because it was still I still read it. I've been rereading it again recently, and it still blows me away. So definitely Red Rising.
And he's somewhat local to you, right? On the same sort of continent. Have you guys had the chance to meet up? Have you talked about what an influence it was? Isn't he?
No, I've never met.
Did I make that up?
I think he's American. I could be wrong. I don't actually know. I just read his book.
Just projecting.
I've never met him. No, I've never managed to speak to him, but I'd love to. I'd like to.
Well, that's the one thing I'm sad about The Loop coming out during the beginning of the pandemic. You didn't, I'm sure you did wonderful digital events, but you didn't get to make awkward small talk at conventions with the drink you regretted getting, and then you've got to carry it around, and you don't know where to put it down. That's a rite of passage.
I'm really looking forward to when the world opens up and I can do that. As awkward as I definitely will be, I'm looking forward to it.
Game Over Queenstown says, "Hi Ben, big fan of your work, even the very early work. In the world of The Loop, what do you think humanity's first step off the moral path was? What led them to the world where your book is set?" Oh my goodness, this is a very sophisticated audience. I should have not asked any of my own questions. These are so much better.
Well, I know who that is actually. Like when they talk about my very early work, that's because they read my very, very early work. The stuff that I was telling you about, I think, is terrible. They read and gave me a lot of encouragement. So I appreciate them asking the question. Humanity's first step off the moral path. Well, I think it happened long before the book is set. In fact, even long before now. Sentient, it looks back through humanity's history, and within 3 seconds judges us as a sort of plague. There's like bacteria on the earth that does nothing but bad. So the reason it wants to wipe humanity out is because it looked back through our history and saw that we've done nothing but cause wars and destruction and death everywhere we've been. And so I guess our first step off the moral path was thousands and thousands of years ago. That's probably where it all began, even though it's set in the future.
And I love the little details that remind us that it's still our world, like the books Luca reads when he's in the loop. It makes it all the more chilling to know that, that's could be our future.
Yeah, I guess the reason that, the reason that kind of, on some level, Luca almost agrees with the artificial intelligence and says that, looking back through history, they are right. Humanity has been caused pretty much nothing but negativity and badness, but kind of points out that it's really just the few people in power that cause that, rather than the many people who stand against it. So the reason they continue fighting and the reason that they, see light at the end of the tunnel is that there is goodness in humanity, and hopefully that comes through in the book.
Oh, I got chills. Daniel Dower says, this one is for both of you. I've seen him asked on TVC events before, so who would your authorial doppelgangers be? I.e., who do you think your style or story structure most resembles? Oh, man. Ben, you've got to take that one first. I have no idea. I feel sort of like arrogant to, compare myself.
I know. I don't want to say like somebody great because of that. I feel like I'm saying that.
Why don't we do it for each other? So The Loop is one of the first books that was comped to the Hunger Games that I thought was worthy of that. Whenever you see that comparison, you're like, okay. And then I started reading like, yep. With just that just incredibly immersive world building that you just sink into. And it's the right amount of disorientation and also curiosity where you just sort of have faith that this author is going to take you on this journey and explain what's going on, and the high stakes, but the authentic emotions. So I thought that was a good comp. There was like a Maze Runner element to it that really resonated with me. So basically everything the marketing team compares your book to, I agree 100%.
Well, thank you very much. That's a really, really nice comparison. But I was going to say almost exact 100, which I love, by the way. It's a fantastic series of books. But I was going to say, yeah, Suzanne Collins, Veronica Roth type of, yeah.
I really
I wish I could think of something different than to what you said with mine, but that's the vibe.
I really appreciate that, because I remember when I was in sort of the throes of first book distress and imposter syndrome, I had just reread Divergent, and I thought, like, what is the point? Like, why am I writing like a hollow invitation? I'm just going to give up, cancel the contract, give back the money. So I really appreciate that. I'd already spent my advance on anthropology dresses, so I knew I had to finish it. Ooh, these are good questions. Okay. Who would your dream cast be, or just your dream casting of Luca?
Oh, sorry, that froze for me there for a while.
Oh, sorry. Who would you cast as Luca in an adaptation?
Oh, I've had this question before, and it's so difficult because I don't really... he's 17 when the book starts, and I don't know any 17-year-old actors right now. I love the idea. What I really love is the idea of casting an unknown, to be honest, and sort of starting their career or doing like a Stranger Things type thing where it just blew up and these people became like huge stars after that. Would be amazing. Obviously, that's sort of the dream. That would be a dream scenario for it to be such a big thing and such a hit that the actors in it would become, big stars. But I honestly couldn't name a young 17-year-old actor right now. So I should probably start looking up and start watching things with young actors in them, because I get this question all the time and I can never answer it because I just don't know.
Well, in a real life event, you just throw it back to the audience and then they shout things. So you don't have to worry about that. Oh no. Either I've frozen or you're frozen. Let's see. Okay, we're good? We're good? Okay.
Yes, sorry, it dropped out again, but...
Happy! Put me back on!
I need to stop. Nice to stop disrespecting artificial intelligence and technology.
This one's from Drew. As booksellers, we are always trying to perfect the 15-second elevator pitch to hand sell a book. How would you pitch it? What's your elevator pitch?
Ooh, I feel like I need time to work that out.
Than we are generally. The booksellers are so good. Let's see. My elevator pitch for the 100, which is the one that's most appropriate for this event. I don't know. I feel like it's sort of been in the ether for a while. So I'm going to talk about my most recent book, The Ravens, that I co-wrote with my friend Danielle Page. And that is about a sorority of witches at a fictional college in Savannah, Georgia. And it follows two girls, one who doesn't know that she's a witch, another from a long line of witches, and they have to learn to use their magic to take down a looming threat. And they can sort of discover along the way that while a single witch is powerful, a coven is unstoppable. So it's about magic and sisterhood, and that needs to be a long elevator ride. I think I failed.
No, it was good. I want to read that. That sounds fantastic. So for the loop, I would say, in a futuristic death row prison, Luca Kane and his friends must figure out how to escape before the malevolent artificial intelligence takes over and destroys the world. That's not bad for off the top of my head, I think.
That's better. That was so tight and punchy. I know that, my game. Okay, get X, like X me. The cliffhanger at the end of the loop was just all caps. Can you talk about how to write a good cliffhanger that leaves the reader wanting more? I would like to know that too.
I suppose the cliffhanger at the end of the loop, it's almost a little bit unfair because it's it should be self-contained. And I suppose you could think of it could end like that. The story could end like that, but it doesn't. So it's almost a little bit unfair, to have that in there. But I think, writing a good cliffhanger, I wish I had better advice, but it's just to surprise yourself almost. Is to whether you're planning it, whether you're writing a plan, like a chapter by chapter plan, or you're just writing like I do without planning. When the idea comes to you, if it can surprise you and if it can kind of catch you off guard almost when it first pops into your head, then it's a good idea. And then once you know what that twist or that cliffhanger is going to be, you can make it even more impactful by going back and redrafting to make it seem like to either seed it if it's a twist, or to make it come right out of the blue if it's something you want the readers to be really caught off guard by. So it's again more about just the craft of writing and going back and rewriting. Sadly, I wish it was more exciting than that, but.
Well, speaking of seeding things and going back and rewriting, there's obviously a limit to what you can do when you are writing a trilogy at the pace you are. Without giving too much away, as you work on book 3, was there anything you realized like, oh, I wish I'd put that in book 1, or I wish I hadn't said that in book 2, or do sort of the confines, the limitations allow you to be more creative and flexible?
There definitely is. Every now and then something will come and like, I wish, you almost wish you'd written the entire trilogy before you sent book 1 out to into the world, because there's little things like certain characters I could have dropped in on book 1 that would just make that a little bit more impactful, them appearing in book 3. But it's just not possible. This is not how it works. And they're only little things. They're not things that change the story or change the plot at all. It's just, it would be cool if I'd mentioned this character who appears in book 3 in book 1, just as a passing background character that becomes more, it's just little things like that. There's nothing that really that I regret. There's nothing that I regret not putting in book 1, or there's nothing that after book 1 came out or book 2 has now come out that I'm like, I wish I could take it back now. Only a little bit. Just little tiny things that would possibly improve it, 0.25% or something.
I think that's a healthy attitude. Heath Tillman asks, what's your favorite reader response that you've received so far for The Loop? And then also asking for me for The Ravens.
My favorite reader response is definitely somebody dressed up as my main character for Halloween, and that was just an unbelievable moment. I've also got fan art. People have drawn pictures of the characters the way they imagine them, and it's incredible to see, people who have engaged so much and enjoyed the book so much that they've taken the time to, make fan art or make a costume to dress up for that character's Halloween. And this is quite a lot of that's happening in America, and being in Scotland, 1,000 miles away. It blows my mind when I see that so far away across the world, people are reading my books and connecting with them so much. It's amazing. So I think definitely my favorite fan response has been fan art and people dressing up as my characters.
Oh, it's the coolest. I think my answer is just going to be a little cheesy. The best response I've gotten, which is just people saying they can't wait for the sequel to The Ravens, The Monarchs. It's always I've published, I don't even know how many books at this point, but I'm still always a little surprised when people want to read them for fun and spend their own money, or just walk to the library to get them. I'm there's so much out there. There's so much competing for our time and attention. And it's just such an honor that someone wants to hang out with my characters and then do it again. It's getting asked out on that second date. I'm always delighted. I think we might be wrapping up, which is good because I know it's late for you and probably for some of your friends and families. Are any of your students joining us tonight?
I don't think so, because they should be at school tomorrow because it's Friday. And it's almost 1 o'clock in the morning here, so hopefully not. But if you are, then I appreciate it, but go to bed.
So normally, I think what I learned from David is to wrap up asking people what they're working on. but we know you're working on book 3, and we have to keep you working on book 3. So is there any book you would recommend, anything you've been loving for people to read while they're anxiously awaiting the 3rd book in your trilogy?
Well, since mentioning Red Rising, that's all I can think of, and I'm probably going to reread that again, the Red Rising series. I'm listening to Kindred by Octavia Butler on Audible right now, and that's fantastic. That's a book that, again, a really early sci-fi book that has definitely influenced me, so I recommend those 2 books. Neither of them are brand new, but especially not Kindred, but I would recommend reading both those books. They're fantastic.
Oh, God, I love Kindred. I named a character in the 100 Octavia after Octavia Butler, so that's perfect. Well, Ben, it has been such a pleasure chatting with you. Congratulations again.
Thank you so much. It's been great chatting to you, too.
And I think Drew's going to pop on to wrap up and tell people how they can order copies of your book.
Indeed, I am. Yes, everyone, it's everyone's favorite time, shameless plug time. So, if you liked this show, if you thought, gee, these books sound incredible, I'd love to read them, where can I get them? Let me tell you, you can get them at Town Book Center. We're located in Collegeville, Pennsylvania. We're right across the street from the largest Wegmans in the country. If you are not in Pennsylvania or you don't feel comfortable going out and about yet, that's completely fine. You can always shop with us online at townbc.com. That's TOWN as in Nike, E as in Echo, B as in Bravo, C as in Charlie.com. And correct me if I'm wrong, we have some giveaways, some goodies for the people who come in and grab books. Is that right? Am I remembering that correctly? Yes.
Yes, I think you are.
Excellent. Perfect. Well, everyone, thank you all for coming out. I hope you had a great time. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and also share this video if you liked it with your friends and your family, or even people you don't like. Pester them. Just spam it. That's also an acceptable thing. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Night, everybody.